Aperture Priority is one of the most fun ways to learn photography and start taking control of your camera. Hello, I'm Paul Fontanelli and this is photographytv.com. We're a site that's designed to educate, entertain, and inspire you around your photography. And during this video, we're going to talk about how to start taking control of your camera, getting out of auto, and using Aperture Priority. So Aperture Priority on most cameras is the A on the mode to start going into Aperture Priority. And what that's going to allow you to do is control the aperture on your photographs. And what it does is in the exposure triangle, you've got shutter speed, aperture, and ISO. And what Aperture Priority does is it allows you to control aperture while leaving shutter speed and ISO in auto. And so now, assuming you understand aperture, if you don't understand aperture, please watch this introduction to aperture video. That'll explain what aperture is and the effect it has on your photographs. But assuming you understand aperture, we're now ready to take control of aperture using Aperture Priority. And so the reason that you're probably wondering why I'm standing next to an alligator head, a weird little alien, this is actually a bowling pin, and a unicorn, you're probably wondering why I'm standing next to these. I'm going to actually use Aperture Priority to show you how you can change the aperture and change the effect of your photograph just by using Aperture Priority. And that's what makes it so fun. When you're learning photography by getting into Aperture Priority, taking control of aperture, you're going to see you get to control the effect of the image. You can control how much is in blur, how much is in focus or out of focus. All of that good stuff is controlled through Aperture Priority. So what we're going to do now, we're going to pull out the camera, we're going to take a look, and we're going to set it first to a very low f-stop, a very wide aperture, as wide as my lens can go, which is 1.4. And now understand, when you're playing with your camera, every lens, not the camera, every lens has a different ability for aperture. So yours might not be able to go as low, yours may be able to go to different amounts. Just work with what you have, with the lens that you have. And so now let's show you examples using a very low f-stop or wide aperture and show you how we're going to be able to control Aperture Priority and go from focusing on the alligator first at a very low f-stop and blur everything else out in the image by setting it to Aperture Priority. But then, very simply, you're going to see me, I'm only going to change the aperture on the camera and then the camera is going to solve the rest of it. The camera will change the shutter speed. It'll change the ISO if it needs to. As I change the aperture, you're going to see the rest of this image will start to come into focus, which that's what aperture does. But the point is, I'm just going to show you how changing aperture by itself will keep all of the image at the proper exposure, because that's what Aperture Priority does, but it'll actually allow me to control the effect on the image. So let's go ahead and go behind the camera, start taking some shots, and show you how by controlling that f-stop, we're going to go ahead and control the effect on the image. All right, so here you have it. I'm focusing right on the alligator's eyes. I'm at a really low f-stop. So my goal here is I want to blur the rest of the image out. And that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm in Aperture Priority. I've got the low f-stop. Take this picture and you can see the alligator's in focus, or his eyes are in focus. Some of the rest of his teeth and things are even out of focus because I have such a wide aperture in this particular example. But let's change the aperture, because that's what Aperture Priority allows me to do. Let's change it up to, let's go from 1.4 up to 2.8. All right, now watch what happens when I manually change the f-stop. As you can see, I'm changing the f-stop and the shutter speed is changing automatically. Let's show you that again. This is the benefit of Aperture Priority. As I change the f-stop, the shutter speed and the other settings change automatically to keep the proper exposure. But now let's change it from 2.8 up to 5.6. So by increasing the f-stop, I'm going to bring more of the image into focus. And you can see that's exactly what it's doing. Now I'm going to go from f5.6 up to f8. You can see the image looks just slightly different. It continues to put more of the image in focus as I increase that f-stop. I'm going to go from f8 to f11. And you can see now even more of the image is in focus. f11 up to f16. And then lastly, let's go from f16 to f22. And you can see now almost everything is in focus because that's a much different aperture at f22 compared to the other shot shown you here side by side at f1.4. So by being an aperture priority, I took control of the amount of blur, the effect on the image, just by changing that f-stop, and that's exactly what aperture priority does. It allows you to control the aperture, and the camera's going to do the rest on the exposure triangle for ISO and shutter speed to account for the aperture that you set it at. Aperture priority is a great and fun way to start testing the skills and learning it and have a lot of fun while doing it. So thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our channel on YouTube and check out photographytv.com for additional videos and tutorials to help educate, entertain, and inspire you around photography.